Hello, and welcome to Super Aging after a couple of minutes delay. Technical difficulties. Yay. All right, so Super Aging is a show all about tweaks and changes that we can make to our life now so that we can age well into the future. I'm Marianne from One Life to Flourish. I'm a qualified master coach with a focus on wellness and mindset, and I'm an intuitive energetic healer. So today I am talking about mental health as we age, particularly things around dementia. So this is a fairly important topic, I suppose, and I know it's also something that many people are concerned about, particularly if, like me, you have relatives who've suffered from dementia, some form of dementia, in the past. So the thing is that with how to keep our mental health going, we have actually ended up with getting a little bit of misinformation around it. Not a lot, but I'm going to go through some basics, and hopefully that will kind of help just to make sure that we're all on the right track. So the reason why I've decided to do this topic is because I was having a conversation with a colleague at work, and he was talking about how he makes sure he does, his daily crosswords so he doesn't get Alzheimer's. And it made me realize that, some of the information that were given maybe 10, 15 years ago about how to maintain really good brain health as we age has actually not been kind of updated enough so that people really know what's going on. But I'm going to start back where I like to start, which is the fact that all of the good, healthy habits are the ones that actually set us up for super aging, no matter what our focus is. So, good, healthy, natural eating, lots of movement and exercise, good quality sleep, and reducing our stress are some of those ones. So no matter what you're actually trying to do, hi Nige, how are you today? No matter what you're trying to do in your life, start with those things and it will help you. That's your basic stuff. So always start off with those things. I'm going to talk about them a little bit in particular to do with our brain health. But just remember, think healthy, think movement, think sleep, and low stress, and you can't go wrong. But let's start with talking about healthy eating, which does include avoiding too much processed sugar. I'm not going to talk about the sugar side of it at this point, but there are studies that show that, having too much processed sugar in our food really does have an impact on our brain. So healthy eating, particularly a Mediterranean style of eating. So this is like the Mediterranean style diet, I suppose, where you have lots of fresh veg, lots of fruit, nuts, plant proteins, unsaturated oils, in other words, olive oil, and some fish. So this diet has been shown to actually reduce the chances of people developing cognitive impairment, which is one of those things that can also lead to dementia. So that's the kind of diet you need to aim for, which really is a nice, healthy, balanced, natural diet. Now, physical activity is an absolute must. This is one of those things that I was not very good at for quite a long time, but now I embrace it every day of my life. So basically, using your muscles has been shown to impact the health of your brain and your mind. So what it actually does, it increases the tiny little blood vessels that bring blood into the part of the brain that's responsible for thought and developing memory and how we think. So that's pretty cool. But then exercise also increases the production of nerve cells themselves, and it actually helps to improve the connections between those brain cells. So all of this means that your brain becomes more plastic. So remember, we want to keep brain plasticity as long as we can during our lives. It also makes our brains much more efficient in how they work, how they process information, and also really adaptive. Now, the adaptive part of it has been shown to be super, super important as we age. Having adaptive kinds of thinking can help us to keep, I suppose, a really young attitude as we get older. All right, so healthy eating, physical activity. Next up, good old quality sleep. So this is about having, in particular, sufficient amounts of deep sleep and REM sleep. So it's during sleep that memory consolidation happens, and it particularly happens during deep sleep and REM sleep. And to get sufficient quality sleep, you actually need to have about 7.5 hours. That will give you enough of the cycles that your sleep that you go through, the sleep cycles that you go through each night, to actually end up with enough REM sleep and deep sleep. So long as you've got quality sleep happening, all right? So focus on how you can do that. Then we have stress. So stress is probably definitely super, super important to focus on as we age. Reducing it is what I mean. So stress is basically enemy number one for brain health. Because what they've found is that having prolonged high levels of stress over many, many, many years, which is what we tend to have in our current lifestyle, it actually destroys our brain cells. And the damage particularly happens to the hippocampus. Now, this is the part of the brain that is responsible for us forming new memories and then being able to recall old ones. So you can see stress can be almost the number one cause of, I suppose, creating a situation where you could get some form of dementia. So remembering that with, any forms of dementia, there is a certain amount of uncertainty around whether you get it or not. Oh, hi, Adair. How are you? Yes, I know it's a great topic, isn't it, Adair? Hopefully I'm going to just get people to think a little bit about how easy it can be to look after your brain. All right, so please, please work on reducing your stress. Now, let's talk about how we can actually go about increasing mental stimulation. Oh, okay. Looks like Adair has quite a good question here. Let me just put this up so that people can see it. So basically, Adair's wondering how she can get from 5 to 6 hours sleep to 7 to 8 hours sleep. So this really is all about, yes, exactly, about our habits. So we do actually tend to have our own waves in terms of when our energy drops and when we should go to sleep. And we should really be getting up early in the morning anyway, or early enough so that we can get the benefits of early morning light, because that helps to set your sleep cycle. So number one is to plan to go to bed early enough so that you can then get up early enough to enjoy the early morning light. So consistency is number one. Have a wind down procedure so that you can get ready for bed and then go to sleep. So that will be individual as well. So what kinds of things are you going to relax to so that you're able to get into a sleep state? And make sure that you are stopping any access to particularly anything that gives off blue light, essentially. And this should be 2 to 3 hours before you go to sleep, before you want to go to sleep, at least. Ideally, you shouldn't really be exposing yourself to blue light too much in the evening, but I know that's unavoidable. Hey, I do it too. But try and stop any of that in enough time so that you can actually then get into your sleep cycle. I think it might be time for me to go back and talk a little bit more about sleep. So I will do one on that very shortly, but that hopefully will help a little bit. So just really focus on how you can have a good sleep routine. All right, so let me get back to the next part of looking after our brain health, which is about mental stimulation. Now, this is essentially where I started with talking about this topic, because my work colleague thought that mental stimulation was just about doing things like a crossword or a Sudoku every day. Now, they have their part to play. I'm not saying that they don't, but you need to be really careful with any sort of mental stimulation, that it's not just like your normal routine. So essentially, our brain needs stimulation in a certain way to keep it growing and keep it developing during our whole life. And that's what we should aim to be doing with our brain. So the brain is capable of continually growing and developing during our whole life, but we need to focus on the right things for this to happen. So essentially, if you only ever do the same old things over and over again, your brain will not be stimulated enough to keep that plasticity and that growth that it needs to have. So if you are going to be doing mental stimulation type activities, make sure that they kind of have these characteristics. So the first one is that it's teaching you something new. You really want to try and engage your creativity and your curiosity with some of the activities that you're choosing to do. Learning something new is a great thing to do. Make sure it's something really interesting. You also need to make sure that whatever you're doing, it's got a challenge to it. It should require some mental effort to do it, give you a little bit of a brain pain kind of thing. Not a massive amount, but just enough so that you know you're being challenged. Now, the third thing that an activity needs to do is that it needs to have sort of an element of it where you can keep on building on it. So it's not like you just learn how to do it once and then you just repeat it. So think about something that's going to keep on stretching you over and over again, not allowing you to get stuck in a mental rut. And the final thing is make sure it is rewarding. You need to get a feeling of pleasure and satisfaction from doing the activity. Now, what you're going to do is entirely up to you. But think about things like reading different kinds of things that, fall into those 4 categories. Reading has actually been found to have a massive positive impact on our brain growth as we age. It's probably one of those top activities to do. So if you've never been a reader, now's probably a good time to actually see if you get some joy out of it. So what else can you do? Find some subjects, topics and things that you're really interested in and study up on them. Learn something like an instrument, a sport, or a language. Because remember, that's something that will particularly have skill levels that you keep on going through. And it's also useful to actually do something creative. So maybe something artistic or something like that. So they're kind of the categories to look at. Yes, I am actually going to talk about fasting at some point. So I'll just put this up so anyone watching can see what I'm referring to. So fasting is also a fabulous part of your diet, but it does have a bit of controversy. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about that, because autophagy is something that not only helps with keeping away dementia, but many other conditions that we tend to have, or we tend to see as being conditions of old age. So yes, I would definitely recommend that people at least have 12 hours a day where they don't eat any food. Oh, learning the ukulele. Oh, that's cool, Adair. Nice. So lots of good things in there. Exactly. All of those sorts of things. Now, the final thing that I would talk about with your brain health is actually thinking about your social life. So actually being part of social groups and social activities, cultivating friendships, maintaining friendships during your life, and actually, creating some support networks is really important as well in terms of your brain health and keeping dementia, or the chances of dementia, much lower. So there's lots of things that you can do. All right, so hopefully that has given you some really great tips of just little things that you can do, and doing them can actually make your whole life better anyway. So, think about, if you're feeling stuck in a rut, what can you do differently? It could be as simple as, when you go to the shops next, drive in a different way that you've never done before, because that is going to engage your brain curiosity. Oh, what's in this new area that I'm not used to seeing? So think about all of those things. How can you make the brain curious? How can you keep on challenging it? All of those kinds of things. It is a great way to go. So if you would like to be part of a program that does help you to come up with ways to live in a more healthy way, in a way that's going to help you to live longer, I am going to be starting my midlife healing program again shortly, my next round of that. So if you are interested, please let me know, and I will give you some more details and have a chat to you about it. So that's me done for another week. I hope you have a really great week, that you have a week full of lots of pleasures and enjoyment and curiosity, and lots of healthy living. So enjoy your week, and I'll talk next week. So bye for now.